What if the frontman whose ideas helped shape Grand Funk's biggest hit gave away the writing credit out of friendship, then signed everything away in the same way? 55,000 fans at Shea Stadium. 6 straight gold albums with almost no support from hit radio. Then a signature in a hotel room ended it all. A federal court later ruled he couldn't even use his own band's name at full size. This is how Grand Funk Railroad betrayed its captain. Flint, Michigan, the 1960s. This was not a city that produced dreamers. It produced workers, men who punched the clock, bent metal, and understood in their bones that nothing came easy. The automotive plants hummed day and night, and the boys who grew up in their shadow inherited that same relentless work ethic. For Mark Farner and Don Brewer, Flint wasn't just a hometown. It was a forge. Farner grew up in the blue-collar neighborhoods that surrounded those factories, a restless kid with a guitar and an instinct for melody that no amount of poverty could suppress. Brewer was his counterpart, disciplined, rhythmically precise, the engine to Farner's fire. Together, in the mid-1960s, they found themselves playing in a local group called Terry Knight and the Pack, led by an ambitious former disc jockey who had a genius for promotion and an iron grip on everything around him. Before we continue, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. The Pack had local Michigan heat, but no national traction. And Terry Knight, brilliant, controlling, and always the smartest man in the room, kept the band's musical instincts firmly under his thumb. When the group finally dissolved, Farner and Brewer found themselves at rock bottom in a Michigan winter. Farner would later describe them as being so poor they were living on oatmeal and melted snow, a dark little joke that captured just how close to the edge they felt. There was no backup plan. Rock and roll wasn't an option. It was survival. Out of that desperation came a vision. Farner and Brewer recruited bass player Mel Shocker from Question Mark and the Mysterians and returned to Terry Knight, this time as a manager rather than a band leader. The concept was radical in its simplicity. 3 instruments, no keyboards, just pure working-class American force. Grand Funk Railroad was born in early 1969, named after the Grand Trunk Line cutting through Michigan, a landmark as essential to the region as the factories themselves. Their debut performance at the Atlanta International Pop Festival in July 1969 was the spark. They were virtually unknown, handed an unpaid slot on a bill headlined by Janis Joplin and Creedence Clearwater Revival. Then they took the stage. The raw force of 3 men and their instruments hit the crowd like a freight train. Word spread instantly. They were signed to a label within weeks. Terry Knight had a gift. He could not only spot talent, he could manufacture mythology around it. His strategy for Grand Funk was audacious. Where most managers sought radio play and press coverage, Knight deliberately shielded the band from critics, creating a mystique that made the fans feel like they had discovered something the establishment was trying to hide. It worked brilliantly. Between 1969 and 1971, Grand Funk released 6 gold albums with minimal hit radio support. The audience found them anyway, not through DJs or reviews, but through sheer word of mouth and the volcanic power of their live performances. Fans were discovering them. The business structure Knight had built was quietly bleeding them dry. The arrangement with the recording company funneled roughly 16% of album profits through Knight's production deal, while the band itself saw only about 6% before Knight's additional cut as manager. 3 men filling stadiums and generating millions were receiving a few $100s a week in stipends from a corporation Knight controlled. Farner later recalled their financial ignorance with painful clarity. "We were 20 years old, brother, and we're listening to a guy and thinking, well, he's our manager, and he knows best." By 1971, the numbers had become too enormous to ignore. Grand Funk Railroad sold out Shea Stadium. 55,000 tickets in 72 hours, breaking the record set by the Beatles themselves. Mark Farner arrived by helicopter and looked down at a crowd so dense, so physically moving, that the entire structure appeared to bounce. Not metaphorically, literally. 3 working-class kids from Flint had conquered the world's most iconic rock venue without the usual string of radio smashes to their name, and they were still receiving a few $100s a week. The reckoning came in March 1972. The band finally examined the books and discovered the scale of Knight's financial extraction. Don Brewer summarized the moment with blunt clarity. They wanted to hear what was happening with the money, and Knight, in their view, gave them nothing but the runaround. They fired Knight immediately. No negotiation, no warning. Terry Knight did not go quietly. He filed a $57 million lawsuit, a figure designed not for reasonable settlement, but for maximum leverage and pressure. Bank accounts froze overnight. Royalties vanished into legal limbo. Every dollar the three men had earned through years of touring became suddenly inaccessible. The American dream had been turned into a weapon aimed directly at the people who had built it. For three men who believed in honest labor, who had grown up in Flint's factories, and at one point joked about melting snow just to get by, this was more than financial disaster. It was a betrayal of everything they thought success meant. They hired John Eastman to represent them in what became a brutal, multi-year legal war involving more than 30 separate claims and counterclaims. The legal fees mounted. The clock kept running, and Knight, unrepentant about his tactics, made it clear he was willing to be the villain if it paid. But the worst moment came on December 23, 1972. Grand Funk was scheduled to perform a sold-out benefit concert at Madison Square Garden for Phoenix House, a drug rehabilitation center. Thousands of fans were already in their seats. Minutes before the band was due to take the stage, Knight arrived with law officers and a court order authorizing the seizure of their instruments and equipment as partial payment for his lawsuit. Accounts from those there describe him pointing out their gear, the guitars that had shattered Shea Stadium, the drums that had powered a generation, and asserting that, legally, they were his. The band faced an impossible choice: cancel and risk a riot, or play the show and watch everything they owned be confiscated the moment the final note died. A desperate backstage compromise was reached. They would perform. They would give the audience everything they came for. And Knight's crew would be waiting in the wings to haul away every piece of equipment the second they walked off stage. They played, and then they watched it all get taken. The legal war finally concluded in February 1974. The band kept their name, but surrendered the publishing rights to their entire early catalog. Every song they had poured their souls into. Gone. They had survived the first betrayal. But the price had been everything. With the publishing rights stripped away and legal bills mounting, Grand Funk faced a brutal arithmetic. They needed immediate, massive commercial success, or they would face financial ruin. The raw, thundering power trio that had conquered Shea Stadium with limited top 40 backing was no longer a viable business model. They needed radio. They needed hits. Don Brewer pushed for a new direction. The solution was Todd Rundgren, a brilliant producer with an ear for commercially powerful rock that sounded ready-made for FM radio. Farner had reservations. The band's identity had always been built on raw, unfiltered power, the kind of music that hit you in the chest before it reached your brain. The Rundgren sound was different, more controlled, more commercial, but the voting structure was simple and devastating. Brewer and Shocker held 2 votes. Farner held 1. That arrangement, which had seemed like reasonable band democracy, had quietly become a mechanism for sidelining the band's primary creative force. The Rundgren era produced massive hits, none more iconic than We're an American Band, which hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1973. Officially, Don Brewer wrote and sang the song, but here is where the story takes a turn that will change how you hear it forever. According to Farner, it was he who suggested the cowbell, he who wrote the chord changes, the harmonies, and key pieces of the arrangement, while Brewer supplied the lyrics. When it came time to assign the writing credit, Brewer approached him with a simple request. He had never had 100% writing credit on any song. Could he take it on this one? Farner agreed, out of friendship, out of the same heart-first instinct that had always made him the soul of the band, and, time and again, the most vulnerable man in the room. Brewer walked away with the sole writing credit on one of the biggest rock hits in history. Farner walked away with a memory. Over Farner's objections, Brewer and Shocker voted to add keyboardist Craig Frost in 1973, ending the power trio format that had defined them. The Locomotion hit number 1 in 1974. Some Kind of Wonderful climbed to number 3 in 1975. Commercially, the reinvention worked, but the creative authority Farner had wielded, the instinct that produced those first 6 gold albums, was being steadily replaced by decisions where he consistently held the minority position. The machine was running, but it was running without him at the wheel. The original lineup dissolved by 1976, battered by the Terry Knight aftermath, the forced commercial pivot, and years of internal friction. Brewer found stability with Bob Seger's Silver Bullet Band. Farner pursued solo work. The brotherhood that had survived the Pac's dissolution, the Atlanta Festival, and the Madison Square Garden ambush had finally fractured from within. But nostalgia is a powerful force. By the mid-1990s, the classic rock circuit was thriving, and Farner, Brewer, and Shocker reunited. The response was overwhelming. Fans who had never forgotten showed up in force. The chemistry was real. The wounds seemed to be healing. For 3 years, it felt like something genuine had been restored. For a generation that had grown up on those songs, the reunion felt like a homecoming. Then came 1998. Following a show at Canocti Harbor Resort in Kelseyville, California, Farner later recalled that Don Brewer approached him in his hotel room with documents. The explanation, as Farner remembers it, was simple and reassuring. Signing his individual ownership of the Grand Funk trademark into a shared company would create a protective umbrella for the band's brand against outside interests. Farner had not finished high school. He had left early to pursue music, while Brewer had taken some business law coursework. In that hotel room, with the performance still ringing in his ears and his lifelong friend standing before him, Farner trusted the man he had known since his mid-teens. He signed. As Farner tells it, the realization came within days. A notification informed him that the board of directors for the company, now comprised solely of Brewer and Shocker, had voted to remove him as officer and president of the corporation. He was no longer part of the management or performing entity of the band he had fronted for decades. Farner later recalled the moment he understood. "Man, that's when I kinda woke up to what I did and kinda slapped myself. Those are the mistakes you pay for." He reflected on the trust he had extended. "I didn't finish high school, and he had taken a bit of a course in law. I thought he was looking out for the best interests of the band. I didn't think they'd stick it up my butt, but that's what they did." The man who wrote and sang over 90% of Grand Funk Railroad's catalog had, in his view, signed himself out of his own band in a hotel room in Northern California. He remained a 1/3 shareholder on paper, but he held 0 votes, 0 management authority, and 0 ability to stop what was coming next. Brewer and Shocker moved quickly. They assembled a new Grand Funk Railroad lineup: Max Carl on vocals, Bruce Kulick on guitar, Tim Cashin on keyboards, and began touring under the full Grand Funk Railroad name, performing Farner's songs to audiences who, in many cases, had no idea the original frontman was gone. The shows sold. The fans came. And nothing in the advertising was required to mention that the man who wrote most of the music wasn't in the building. Farner attempted to bill himself in ways that referenced his history with the band. Brewer and Shocker sued him to stop it, and they won a permanent injunction. A federal order was issued against Mark Farner, one of the most restrictive in music history. He was banned from using the Grand Funk name to promote his own performances, except under very specific conditions. He was permitted to bill himself as formerly of Grand Funk Railroad or similar phrasing, but only under precise, almost surreal rules. His first and last name had to appear in capital letters before any reference to Grand Funk Railroad, and the band name could only have its first letters capitalized. The font size of the Grand Funk reference could be no larger than 50% of the size of his own name. Any deviation constituted a violation of the federal order. Farner's frustration cut to the bone. They don't tell the fans that the guy who wrote and sang 90-some-odd% of that music ain't gonna be there. So it's very dishonest, I think. But it's legal. Reviews of the Brewer Shocker lineup were blunt. Critics and concert-goers often described the experience as a polished imitation of something that no longer existed in its original form. Max Carl was a skilled vocalist who could approximate Farner's sound. But something essential was absent. As one reviewer noted, it felt less like Grand Funk Railroad and more like the best Grand Funk tribute band imaginable. Farner continued to perform as Mark Farner's American Band, his name in the approved font, the reference to his history reduced by federal mandate to half the size of everything else. He attended the mandatory annual corporate meetings. He and Brewer spoke only when the law required it. The protective umbrella had become a cage. To understand why Farner's story carries weight beyond court documents and font size regulations, you have to understand what his music meant to the men who heard it. I'm Your Captain arrived in 1970 at the height of the Vietnam War. It wasn't marketed as an anthem. It was simply a piece of music that found an entire generation of American men, serving, returning, or watching the country come apart, and told them someone understood. The image of a man trying to get home, holding on to the belief that someone was listening, spoke to something no press release could manufacture. Farner recalled a veteran who told him that when their boat finally reached shore and they set foot back on American soil, they kissed the ground. Farner described hearing it. I'm seeing the tears just rolling down his cheeks as he's telling me. That image stayed with him for the rest of his life. Farner wasn't just a rock singer. He was the captain. The voice that told them someone understood what they had endured. The corporate machinery that removed him from his own band felt, to many of those fans, like a personal violation. His faith became his anchor through the years of legal battles. He prayed for his former bandmates, citing the biblical instruction to pray for those who spitefully use you. He framed his situation not with bitterness, but with the quiet certainty of a man who knew exactly who he was. I am who my songs say I am. Grand Funk had been called the people's band from the beginning. Loved by audiences, dismissed by critics, built on the belief that music could speak directly to the working-class soul without the approval of gatekeepers. The 1998 betrayal was the final, most painful chapter in a career-long war between that identity and the machinery that sought to control it. The machine got the name, it got the trademark and the injunctions and the annual corporate meetings. What it never got was the reason those songs mattered in the first place. Grand Funk Railroad proved that working-class fire could light up the world's biggest stages. But Mark Farner's story is the darker truth, that the machine elevating working-class dreamers will eventually try to consume them. They took the name, they kept the trademark, but they never took the voice that moved 55,000 people to their feet at Shea Stadium. The captain is still out there, still playing those songs. Some legacies can't be reduced to 50%. What part of his story hit you hardest? Drop it in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold stories from rock's greatest era.